This exercise is called a side bridge. Today I'm going to show you the difference between it and a side plank and how it can benefit things like low back stiffness or hip stiffness. Now, a side plank is going to be mainly here to up to down. Now, there is a little bit of a sit back component with it, but you'll actually get more hip dominance, more glute max dominance or glute med dominance if you bend the knees, which allows us to sit back more. So the exercise, the way it generally looks, is going to be here to here, like you're sitting backwards into a chair, and so on. Now, in this video, I'm going to cover some variations. As you can see, I have a pad as well as a rope over there, but also some faults that people tend to make. This is a really easy entry-level exercise for a lot of different conditions, especially of the spine. But the problem is a lot of times people sometimes have failure points with it. They feel their back with it, or they feel a pinchiness in their hip, and that's not necessarily ideal. So you can just change the coaching a little bit. So I'd say the first thing that people tend to make a mistake on is they tend to sag between reps. So they'll do a rep correctly, and then they'll sag. Ideally, what we want for like a rep scheme most of the time is going to be about 5 to 10 seconds on, 3 to 5 seconds off, but it's not really off, it's just less effort. Now, I can tell right now that my elbow is going to start getting tanked, and a lot of times people's shoulders get a workout as well with this. That is an added benefit. A lot of times people who have older shoulder conditions sometimes have a problem with this. In that case, you can do a variation from the hand, which is similar. You still sit back. And for some reason, this works a lot better for sometimes old shoulder conditions than this does. But worst case, you just cluster it. You go about 5 reps like this, and you do 5 reps like this. That way your shoulder is not the thing that gives way, because we kind of want this flank or the hip to be. Now, the second thing, the problem that most people make is they don't actually get their feet out of the way. So my feet here are actually hidden from the camera, if you will. They're behind my knees. But a lot of times people just kind of leave their feet exposed, and they end up pivoting from a different point versus from the knee. We want to pivot from the knee, and the easiest way to do it is just get the feet out of the way. Now, the other thing that people tend to do is they don't actually do a plank version of it. They do this wiggle worm thing. And so I'm going to pull my shirt up just so you can see what the point is here. So when they come up, they actually have this big old rib flare with it. The rib flare is a big no-go. In the bottom position, if you move away from the floor and keep that tunnel preserved, a lot of times people's rib position is actually correct. And as long as they can keep that through the exercise, it shifts the workload from the spine back to the hip again, okay? But the sitting back drive is actually what helps out with a lot of hip dominance too. Let's just say you're still having some issues. I remember one person that I worked with that they actually had a lot of issues going through the movement, but actually what we regressed to is just a tension cue, all right? The tension cue is one of the most productive things you can do. It makes the exercise very hard, but also you still get stimulus in the areas that you need it without actually having to go through a whole movement of it. So what we had her do was we actually did the bottom side bridge position like we are here, and then I put a piece of paper underneath her knee and said just crush the paper. Okay? So if you just roll into the rope or paper and then push the paper down, you'll have to use the side of your knee. You can't use your shin, you can't use your foot. So it auto-corrects a lot of things. So you roll in and then you push it down really, really hard and hold for about 5 to 10 seconds. Now if you do this, you'll start to feel this butt cheek just go on fire, which is what we want. So if you drive down into that position, you'll get more glute max and glute med activity than you would if you just do the regular version, but it is a regression. Now, let's just say this still didn't help you. You may have to go to a tension cue from the other part, which is going to be from the elbows of the hand. A lot of times when I do this, I'll actually put like a cut mat here, like a yoga mat, which helps give the person traction as well as padding, but you can actually tell them to push the mat or push the yoga mat that way, but if they're going to do that, they can't lift their hand off, right? So what this looks like is we reframe the exercise. The exercise is no longer a side bridge. It's no longer pushing that thing down. Your only goal is to stay here, don't get higher, in fact, don't get into a side bridge at all. Just try to push the mat as far as you can that way. If you push hard enough, you will peel yourself up off the ground, but you keep the tension as you sit back. So you push, 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 sit back, but still push. Now that just lights up people's sides, and you can still use that same approach with a plank too. But again, going back to the original point of this exercise, is it to stimulate the side only or to get more of the glute too? And if we're looking to get some of the glute, a side bridge is a very, very good choice. Now the last modification we can make is we just provide a slight variation or environmental change, we call it. And so you can use something like a cushion or something slightly elevated, because what it does is it makes it so you have to push more on that area, all right? And so you push, and then you come on down. And you roll in and you push, and you sit back and you come on down. I can say this version probably does the most for glute activity on the downside, and it's super productive for various different types of hip conditions. Reps and sets are going to be dictated based upon your unique problem or what your goal is, and so your trainer can set those for you. But subscribe to the channel to watch more exercise hacks just like this. See you next time.